Welcome back to the Alec Lewis Show. I am your host, Alec Lewis. This is episode 91, recording on Tuesday, June 17th. Appreciate you guys being here. It's the quietest time of the NFL calendar, really the only quiet time. You get the question when you do this job all the time. So what do you do in the offseason? And it ends up being free agency previews until March, the combine in March, the draft in April, post-draft evaluation in May, and then you get to this point mid-June where you got a month about training camp, and that's where we are. But that does not mean we will stop this podcast or that we will stop answering questions. That's what we're going to do today. Ask for you guys on social media to pass along a bunch of the topics that you wanted discussed. Got a ton of good ones, so looking forward to diving right into that in a bit. As always, this show is presented by First Resource Bank. That's a member FDIC bank in the Minneapolis area, run by Tim Siegley, Aaron Siegley, Charlie Anderson, a bunch of really good people who care about the community, and have put together a pretty awesome local bank that is easy to set up an account with, easy to use from an online banking platform. They've got branches all over the city. So, and then you can hop in the branch and talk Vikings with them. That's the best part. So First Resource Bank, they have, been fans of the show, been supporters of the show from the get-go, and never take their support for granted. So please go check them out. The link to First Resource Bank is in the description below. At The Athletic, still got stories. So, by the time you guys listen to this, or maybe as you're listening on Wednesday morning, gonna have an updated 53 roster projection, the classic type of story for this time of year where I run through position by position, who's in, who's out. And in the one that I do for Wednesday morning, got creative at a couple spots with some free agents who are still on the market, who I kind of plucked in as potential fits for the team. So you guys might be interested in that. We'll cover some of that here on today's podcast, but you can find that over at The Athletic. Got stories. Did a story on a local agent, Blake Barretts, who represents Jonathan Allen and Blake Cashman and CJ Ham and a bunch of other guys across the NFL. And we got into kind of the current dynamics of the agent world right now, which is interesting considering all of the changes that continue to go on in college football. So you guys will probably enjoy that. And then we'll have more to come in the coming weeks as I kind of work ahead on some bigger stuff for training camp and the season that I am very much looking forward to unveiling. All right. Before I get to the question, I want to say, first, congratulations to the restaurant Boucheron in the Minneapolis area. They won a James Beard, and if you're a foodie like me, always kind of curious of the spots in this town that I believe is probably the most underrated food town in America. But I went there this past weekend, had a phenomenal meal. It's like a corner. You feel like you're kind of in France at this corner restaurant where you could see into the kitchen. Everything was as fresh as can be. So highly recommend it. And that is not an ad, but congrats to them on the best new restaurant, James Beard. Pretty cool accomplishment. Highly recommend it. And then for those of you who are food people and you're like, you got to try this in the area, toss it in the comments or at me on social media. I'm always curious. And this is the time of year to get kind of out and go check out some spots. All right. The questions we'll get to after today, the Vikings released some information. You guys are listening to this, so you're probably the type of people who would visit training camp practice and want to go out and watch that. Sounds like the first practice available to fans will be July 26th. Then July 28th is the first padded practice. That'll be available. And then August 4th, the night practice, which is always fun. And then the last open practice is August 14th. And there's like ways to get tickets online and all that. I'm not it's not a sponsorship for me, but it is. I mean, you get to be up close in a pretty relaxed setting. So, players sign autographs and stuff. It's always a pretty good time. Nice little family atmosphere out in Eagan. We'll get to questions. The first one comes from Sam Newton, who may or may not work for the team. He asked, what is your excitement level for back together weekend? That's what they call that first opportunity to watch Practice, I'd say if you asking me this on June 17th, I am not, I need a month to recharge the batteries to get ready for what is going to be a highly, it's going to be a highly interesting season in Vikings land, considering obviously the young quarterback and just the expectations with this team. But, no, I mean, on a joking level, Sam, you got cashless concessions, you got fan elements, you got the Vikings table food truck. I mean, how could you not get excited for Back Together weekend? And I will say, in the days leading up to that, to get out there and watch watch practice and be out there with this team, I will be very much looking forward to it. But right now, I need a little space. I got to be honest. As great as it is to see you, Sam. Next question comes from, and I'll probably botch this name, Zare Contabedian. He asks, is Jordan Mason a complimentary / change of pace back, or is Jordan Mason a co-starter with Aaron Jones? I mean, my initial, how I want to answer that question is, can he kind of be both? Like, he's a compliment and kind of a co-starter? Like, I know the question is obviously coming from a fantasy lens, and this will be a question that, I mean, people who love fantasy, rightfully so, will pour over probably for the next few months of what's the percentage of snaps Aaron Jones gets? Is it going to be 50-50? Is it going to be 60-40? Is it going to be 70-30? What's it going to be? And I get the intrigue because it will matter, obviously, in a fantasy competition. But the way I'd answer it, and this is just my, not having talked to anybody, but my speculative kind of probably projection would be that it's probably going to be about a 60-40 type split where Aaron Jones earns 60% of the playing time and Jordan Mason's probably more of the 40%. And obviously, you have Aaron Jones, who is a much more reliable pass catcher. That's not to say that Jordan Mason cannot catch passes, because I saw that this spring. And Aaron Jones is probably the more reliable pass protector in third down situations. And again, that is not to say that Jordan Mason cannot do that type of thing on the field, but from what they're paying each guy standpoint, that's part of the reason I probably project it how I do. But I will say, the Vikings front office and coaching staff, going back a couple of years now, they have viewed the running back position and optimal running back rooms as, unless you have the elite of the elite, the Saquon Barkleys of the world, the Derrick Henrys of the world, which are, very few and far between, the optimal approach is to have a platoon type situation, which, where you have different types of body types, different skill sets, different change of pace. It doesn't sound like, it's never sounded like they believe you have to have the thunder and lightning type, big body type, and then the shifty body type. It's more like, do we have two guys who can, carry a particular workload, two guys who can be efficient runners? That's the way that I would view what the Vikings want to do in the run game. Is it's establishing a physical type of mindset. It's punishing defenses that are going to try to play them with two high safeties to take away Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison. And so it's against those looks. Can you get 5 yards consistently? Can you get 6 yards consistently? Can you consistently be in 2nd and 5, 2nd and 4, 3rd and 2, 4th and 1 circumstances where the probabilities are very much in your favor that you convert first downs and give you more opportunities for explosive plays? And so, Aaron Jones, while he is slighter than Jordan Mason, you can see that on the practice field. They're both, Jordan Mason, as big as he is, he's still an efficient runner has exceptional vision and finds space. And so that's kind of, this feels like the best complement of players and a platoon type kind of approach that they've had. It makes me think a lot of it, this is nothing new. It makes me think even in the early Nick Saban days at Alabama, where it was Mark Ingram and Trent Richardson, and I know both those guys had interesting careers, and you guys are pro football fans listening to this, but at their best, that's what it was. It was, we can rely on one guy, but we can also ride on another guy in spurts and in series. And I think you guys listen to this definitely know this, but Aaron Jones has obviously navigated injuries both last year and over the course of his career. He's only gotten older. That's not to say he's lost juice or anything. It's just the fact of the matter is the odds would tell you the older you get, the harder it is to remain healthy. And then Jordan Mason even has also navigated injuries kind of over the course of his career. And that's just par for the course for the position. But have two guys that you could conceivably rely on in a meaningful way is a very good place to be if you do want to do what they want to do, which is prevent J.J. McCarthy from having to really play the position on 40 snaps a game where he is orchestrating everything at all times, where it's maximum level of stress. You want to, when you're bringing along a young quarterback, kind of just get, not induce guardrails to make it easy, but I mean, you just don't want the weight of every single play, every single snap, pre-snap, post-snap decision making, snap after snap, game after game to weigh. So as much as you can prevent just a young guy from shouldering every ounce of responsibility, the better. And that's where the run game comes into play. So I hope that kind of gets to the question, Zare. The next question comes from Vikings fan page, an account on Twitter that is very locked in. Any updates on a Josh Metellus extension? I mean, the best way I know to talk about this subject is to lay out where things are right now. So just some facts. Josh Metellus, his contract voids after the 2025 season. So, I mean, typically in the NFL, and you know this, and the people listening to this who are as rational fans as you guys are know this, once you enter the final year of the deal, it's usually kind of the time at which, especially for young players who are 27 years old like Josh Metellus is, it's the time where you start to explore, okay, what does this look like moving forward? Can we strike a deal now, given the way the cap has and the way money has continued to increase, both in the world and in the NFL as a business specifically? Can it benefit both sides to come to terms on an extensive deal now? For the team, that's probably some salary flexibility and planning benefits. That's what that comes with. And for the player, it's security. And like I said, Josh Metellus is 27 years old, so extending a player of his age it's very common action across the NFL. He wants to be here. He's made that very clear, and everything that you see externally, whether it's the Tell Us with Metellus, Josh Metellus video series on the Vikings, social media and YouTube pages, whether it's him at the Timberwolves games, supporting passionately, and I believe he has season tickets to those games. All of that stuff that you see externally just kind of, it matches with what you hear internally about how much he is meant to the locker room, how much of a leader he is. The one aspect that he brings to the table that probably goes under discussed because it's just not the sexiest talker is his cerebral capabilities, both to communicate on the field and be able to check plays and be involved in the communication of checking plays on a snap in, snap out basis. You just can't, you just don't come across guys who have that capability all the time. And then, as much as and it's pretty clear that he wants to be here, it's very clear talking to the Vikings that they want him to be here. I mean, it's not only Brian Flores and his coaching staff's understanding of what he brings to their defense, both, again, from a mental makeup, from a leadership, but also just from a versatility and playing ability. I mean, he plays in the box. He can line up as a defender in the slot. He can play in the deep half. He can blitz off the edge. Anything and everything you would want a defender in this defense to do, he can do. And then, again, when you check the box of lack of crazy injury history, when you check the box of age, when you check the box of extreme influence in creating this culture and developing it to the place that it is today. From the front office's perspective, like when you check all those boxes, that you're obviously going to be sought and wanted to stick around. And so really, I mean, you add all of that up, and on the outside, you guys listen to this, and me as a media member, it's like, okay, so then why hasn't it happened? If both sides want to be here, if he checks all the boxes, I mean, the obvious answer comes down to value. What does the player and his representatives see his value at, and what does the team and the front office see the player's value at? And that doesn't at all mean that there's like dissension on either side. It's just like with any negotiation, you start at a certain place and it takes time to come to the spot at which both sides feel really good about it. I mean, it is a very interesting dynamic in that, I mean, Josh Metellus last season, if you go look at like his snap positioning, I mean, he played more snaps in the box as a slot defender than he did at safety. But he's listed as a safety. So, like, does Josh view himself as a safety because that's what he's listed at and that's what he kind of developed playing as? And if so, does he and his representative Drew Rosenhaus believe that he is worth a certain amount? And then do the Vikings see him as a linebacker type player? Do they see him as a slot defender type player? Do they see him as a safety, or do they have their own proprietary algorithm for a player of his versatility and what they believe that's worth? I mean, what's interesting, last year, Cam Bynum, or this past free agency period, Cam Bynum received $26 million of fully guaranteed money, which is not even in the top five among safeties. And then if you look at $26 million of guaranteed money and compare that with linebackers, like the top five linebackers, that's kind of what they generate. And so it's an interesting kind of dynamic to go through the different positions and the distinct value of each position. I mean, I've laid this out, but I mean, if you're a player, the extension means security. And so if you're coveting security, it probably also becomes difficult to then, receive the maximum value that might get on the market. On the other hand, I mean, there's no guarantee when a player hits the market that he will obtain what he deems as maximum value. I mean, like Cam Bynum last year is such an interesting test case because you guys will remember this, and I was very open about this both on the podcast and in writing. Like, Cam Bynum wanted an extension with the Vikings. He wanted to be in Minnesota. The Vikings really valued Cam Bynum and what he brought to the table. They negotiated an extension kind of throughout spring, summer, into the training camp, and even like in the week up to the season, there were conversations being had. Ultimately, Cam Bynum and his representative at Clutch Sports, Demarius Bilbo, believed, that, we can obtain more on the open market. And by betting on himself and playing out the season, he was incurring risk. Had he gotten hurt, there was no certainty that he would be able to net the value that he ultimately netted. And so he bet on himself. He took that risk. He obviously ended up getting the 4-year, $60 million deal with $26 million of fully guaranteed money, which was a great deal for Cam Bynum, and it worked out for him. The question would be if Josh Metellus took a similar approach that a guy who was a very close friend of his took. A, does he stay healthy? B, if he were to hit the open market via free agency, would teams be willing to pay him the value that he may have here because he has a coordinator here who knows how to use them as good as anybody? It's a very interesting situation. Like, what I would say is, like, if something were to happen before training camp, I wouldn't be that surprised, primarily because I know how much both sides kind of have respect for each other. I also know that Drew Rosenhaus has been able to ink deals with this Vikings front office time and time again. And if it were to go into training camp, and let's say Josh Metellus is out there but not really participating, and then it becomes an even more interesting conversation of like, what does that mean? How willing is Josh to play? I mean, that would create more conversation. Within all of this, you might be saying you're kind of straddling the line, Alec. Like, is it going to happen? Is it not? What's the value? But like the way these things are, they are so fluid to where, as we stand here right now, speaking Tuesday, June 17th, I have a pretty good amount of optimism that things are going to work out the way that both sides would want them to. And then we'll just see over the course of time kind of how grounded each side is in terms of kind of the money, the guarantees, the structure, and all that. And it'll be interesting. But that's kind of where we're at. Nothing like crazy at the moment percolating. But then again, sometimes like you hear stories about, I remember talking to Andrew Barry maybe last year, 2 years ago, about orchestrating the extension with Denzel Ward, the cornerback. And like, that happened on Easter before, Andrew Barry was going to spend time with his family. He calls Tory Dandy. They make it happen. So it just like these things can kind of happen at any time. And I'd say like I fully expect with the way this team treats players and kind of Josh Metellus' awareness that this thing will go kind of a solid way. Next question comes from Skullchester. Will you ever go on Locked On Vikings? I believe he's talking about the Locked On Network, the podcast that they do. If they ask, I'm available. I'm free anytime. Not sure how much I'm going to work overtime over this next month beyond the stories that I'm working on to get ready for the season. But anytime. I'm an open book, free anytime. They can ask, and I'll hop on for sure. Next question comes from JD, J. Dissett III. How has Ty Felton been looking? Feel like we haven't heard anything about him in camp. Ty Felton, for the uninitiated, was the third-round pick from Maryland, the receiver, who the Vikings took, who Keenan McCardell really, really liked, had a very productive season in college last year. I believe it was like 80-plus catches, more than 1,000 yards, very good season. I've watched him a fair amount in the spring workouts. I'll preface it like I've prefaced every evaluation of pretty much every player from these spring workouts, but it was very minimal, like applicable reps that felt like you had a very good feel of what the player was capable of. But was Ty Felton's route running for me definitely not as smooth as the guys in front of him in terms of Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, Jalen Naylor. And you guys might be listening to this like, you're talking about some of the smoothest route runners in the league, and I fully admit, yes, I am. There were a couple drops over the course of the spring that were like, you'd prefer he catch that. If I'm not mistaken, had like somewhat of a thing with drops in college. Nothing crazy. Don't think it's anything that can't be overcome, but it was just something that I eyed. The last day of practice on Thursday of last week had maybe the best catch of training camp. This like, he started, lined up on the left side of the line of scrimmage, runs this deep post kind of across the middle of the field. Sam Howell kind of lobbed it up into double coverage, and Ty Felton on a jump ball kind of came down with it. Thought it was a hell of a catch, kind of like lunging. So that was extremely good to see. It sounds like there is excitement for sure about what he can bring on special teams with his athleticism. So the expectation for me is probably early in the season, if Jordan Addison is suspended for any portion of time, Ty Felton might get opportunities alongside Justin Jefferson and Jalen Naylor and TJ Hockenson, who will have to shoulder the load at that time. But then he'll probably integrate himself through special teams and then ascend probably to more of a meaningful role in the years to come. That's kind of how I've thought about his arc. I don't expect him to come in here and be like an every down receiver. That third receiver role to me squarely falls to Jalen Naylor. And so that's where I'm at with that. But one of Ty Felton's best skill sets is his run after the catch ability. And that is It's just not something through these workouts that we've seen thus far that really bears itself out. I mean, it's been a lot of slow walk through reps where the receivers are just kind of getting a feel, where the quarterback is identifying the defense. Hasn't been a ton of full speed tackle. I mean, that's like for joint practices against New England and potentially Los Angeles. Like, how does Ty Felton look run after the catch against certain corners and secondary players and receivers? That's something that I'll be watching. But nothing that I've seen thus far is any concern, and nothing that I've seen thus far makes me think he is, the Stephon Diggs path of being like a late round pick who ascends to this gigantic, productive type of role. So we'll be interesting to follow kind of throughout training camp what he looks like. So I appreciate the question, JD. The next question comes from John S. Curran. Betting odds for Mr. Mankato. I don't know if I can speak betting odds considering my employer. I'll just say that, like, if we're going strictly off undrafted players from this past season, like, there are 6 names that I'm just curious about. Tyler Batty, the defensive lineman who I've written about. Zamiah Vaughn, the undrafted cornerback from Utah, who I've also written about. Max Brosmer, obviously the quarterback from here, not from here, but played locally here at Minnesota. I've said this on previous podcasts, but he's looked good. I mean, it's been very minimal reps, but just doesn't look like it's overwhelming for him or that it's like too big of a stage. And then the other 3, more like quieter names: Joe Huber, an offensive lineman on the interior; Logan Brown, offensive lineman, more of a tackle; and then Elijah Williams, this small school defensive lineman that the Vikings signed in the undrafted portion and was at rookie minicamp and stuck around after that. He's a guy that I'll be watching. So those 6 in terms of the undrafted guys, definitely worth keeping an eye on. I mean, even the late round drafted, like one of the most not interesting, but probably one of the most competitive camp, roster battles will be the tight end 3 situation. Gavin Bartholomew, the 7th rounder from Pitt, Ben Urasek, the undrafted signee from Georgia, Bryson Nesbitt from North Carolina. Like, those 3 will probably be duking it out for that 3rd spot. That is not an insignificant position considering like the amount of snaps Johnny Munt has played over the last couple of seasons. So that's what I'll say. I mean, for me, this camp, because of the talent on this roster, and probably it's probably going to be less of a Mr. Mankato conversation than it's been in years past, because there's just so much talent that I just don't know how much opportunity exists for that caliber of player. Like, it's just that loaded of a roster. And there's probably some guys I'm forgetting there. I mean, maybe it's like your Lucky Jacksons at receiver, your Thayer Thomases, your Jay Sean Jones. I just am at a place where it just feels like the receiver room for me just feels pretty stacked and pretty set. I mean, you have your Justin Jeffersons, your Jordan Addisons, your Jalen Naylors, your Ty Feltons, and then you got Tim Jones, who might be a special teams contributor. Silas Bolden and Rondale Moore will probably be competing for a couple of those final spots. It just doesn't feel like there's like some out of nowhere key contributor, specifically like dynamic skill player on offense that's just going to come out of nowhere. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe it happens. You never know. Just kind of my feel for right now. JT Thomas, any low radar cuts that you could see happening? Ty Chandler, Walter Rouse, Michael Juergens were the 3 guys he mentioned. I mean, Chandler is definitely an interesting one. He's in the final year of his rookie contract. He's been on the team for 3 seasons. There have been some flashes. I mean, without question, the most notable one was 2023 in Cincinnati. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Ty Chandler ran for 130 yards that day on like 30-plus carries, but it's never felt like he's been able to establish a footing where there's more and more opportunity, or he's building trust time and time again. I mean, even when like it feels like he grabs there's some firmness of ground. Like there's a drop on the edge, or there's a missed assignment in pass protection. So, the Vikings running back depth is not enough to where there's an obvious replacement for Ty Chandler. Like they had the undrafted, I use the word obvious, so I'm flagging in my own right. Hopefully I can, shore that up. But they had the undrafted running back from Jacksonville State, Trey Stewart. Haven't seen a ton of him, so it's not like I'm sitting there incredibly blown away by what I've seen there. The back end of the running back room is an interesting place for me. Like if the Vikings were to make a very low cost, just depth signing that further rounds out what is going to be a very important room for the 2025 season, like why not, go get I'm tossing out names. It's not like crazy intel here. Gus Edwards or Nyheim Hines or I mean, there are other, I'll give you a couple other players because I've got this pulled up. Let's see here, like a Deontay Foreman, Jamal Williams, Jeff Wilson, Chase Edmonds. I mean, JaMychal Hasty. These aren't Josh Kelly. These aren't blow you away players by any stretch. But if Aaron Jones were to suffer a serious injury, or if Jordan Mason, almost said Frank Mason, if Jordan Mason were to suffer a serious injury, and then you're left with Jordan Mason and Ty Chandler, how good do you feel about that? If you're left with a Aaron Jones and Ty Chandler, how good do you feel about that? And because this team is as expensive as it is has the level of expectations as it does have. You have a GM and a head coach who haven't won a playoff game. Because all of those dynamics exist, that is a spot that I kind of wonder. As far as other low radar cuts, I mean, the Juergens-Rouse, I'd be pretty surprised at this point if either of those guys were cut. But maybe one of those undrafted offensive linemen, the Hubers, the Logan Browns, really, really impress and just are more worth keeping around. Defensive line is definitely it's definitely a curious spot. Obviously, you have Jonathan Allen, Javon Hargrave, Harrison Phillips, Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins, Levi Drake Rodriguez, Taki Taimani. I mean, how many of those? Obviously, Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins being a 4th round pick, that would blow me away. But what is? I'm very curious to see Levi Drake in another season. Taki Taimani is interesting. Harrison Phillips is so reliable in the run game, is such a leader in there that that would be another one that would just absolutely shock me. But some of the back end of some of these rooms kind of is curious to me and will be worth monitoring come training camp. Next question comes from Andrew Grill. What are your thoughts on the back half of the cornerback room? Are the Vikings more likely to add another player to the room or give the opportunity to someone already on the roster? So there are 3 cornerbacks right now on this roster that I who I feel very good about. Byron Murphy Jr., obviously, Isaiah Rodgers, and Jeff Okudah. And you guys might be like, Jeff Okudah, really? You feel very good? Isaiah Rodgers, you feel very good? I'm not saying they're going to be Pro Bowl caliber players. It's more I feel confident and very comfortable that they could be thrown in games in this specific system and produce and hold their own. That's just kind of how I feel about it. After those 3, it's more of question marks for me. Mekhi Blackmon, there's a lot of reason to be optimistic. He was a 3rd round pick years ago. Obviously, he's coming back from the torn ACL. Didn't get to see a ton of him in real meaningful reps this spring. So come training camp, he's a guy I'll definitely have my eye on. And then after that, you have your Dwight McGlothers, who was an undrafted free agent last year who made the team. You have Zamiah Vaughn, who I've mentioned, the undrafted cornerback from Utah. But for as optimistic as you or I might be on any of those three players, if they have to play very purposeful situations, like it becomes, I mean, how much confidence can you really have? Even if the pass rush is making it as easy as possible on those guys, you start to be fairly skeptical. So to the question, Andrew, of are they more likely to add another player or give the opportunity to someone on the roster? Like, I just think from a depth insurance perspective, they're probably more likely to add another player to the room. Now, does that mean it's a massive swing on a Jalen Ramsey or a Jair Alexander? Absolutely not. Like, I'm not going to dismiss either of those guys because of their talent levels. But from a cost perspective, like it's interesting. It becomes, I mean, you're trying to really thread a needle with both those guys. Again, from a cost perspective, but also like a locker room fit type question. Those would be kind of the caveats with those two guys. Probably the more likely or the more interesting to me are more of like the free agent corners who are a little more low level. Your Asante Samuel Jr. types, health permitting, what does he look like monetarily? What's he asking for? Like, those are questions that would probably dictate whether that's possible or not. Or further down, probably on a cheaper level, a guy like Jack Jones, who played in New England, has had off the field stuff, was in Las Vegas, definitely kind of a boomer bust corner playmaker, can play with vision, definitely is competitive, but he's shorter in stature. What would his fit look like? Like, he would be a player who I'd be curious about. And then like there's also the trade route, even though I don't expect this front office right now to want to part with really any meaningful draft capital. It kind of feels like they want to stockpile that moving forward, having parted with as much as they have over the last few years, even if they parted with some of it for meaningful contributors like a TJ Hawkinson and potentially you would hope like a Dallas Turner. So that's kind of how I'm viewing that situation. I wouldn't be shocked if, throughout training camp, specifically if there's an injury, you see some kind of acquisition in some form or fashion, but that doesn't mean it has to be the blow you away, massive swing on guy who's been an all-pro, Pro Bowl caliber player. We'll get to a couple more here, and then we'll get out of here. Next question comes from, and I'll probably be quicker with some of these. Next question comes from Tyler. I was a bit surprised the Vikings waived Bubba Bolden. Do you think his departure suggests the Vikings keep 6 corners and 5 safeties, potentially clearing the way for Zamiah Vaughn to make the team in addition to Dwight McGlothern? I wasn't surprised about the Bubba Bolden waive. I'll just say that. Do I think his departure suggests the Vikings keep 6 corners and 5 safeties? It's possible, or they could keep 5 safeties, 5 corners, and have an extra, more versatile defensive lineman or edge rusher like that, or off the ball linebacker. Like, there's a lot of ways to do it. For me, it doesn't have to be the traditional numbers, especially in a defense that is as non-traditional as this one is. I'll say, to expect a Zamiah Vaughn, who's an undrafted corner, and Dwight McGlothern, who's an undrafted corner, to both be on the 53-man, I don't know if I'd go there, but that's just what I'd say for now. Let's see. Next question comes from Carl Johnson. Josh Metellus recently compared J.J. McCarthy and his arm to Sean Mannion, and Vikings Twitter imploded. What can you say to soothe fans? Did Mannion have a powerful arm? I really didn't see Sean Mannion throw passes anything meaningfully. I started in 2022. He was cut / let go. Soon after that, he kind of came back, but it never really saw him meaningfully. What I would say, compare him to whoever you want. I do remember Kevin O'Connell saying he couldn't play catch with Sean Mannion because it just hurt his hands too bad. So Sean Mannion probably had a good arm. Probably the challenge with Sean Mannion was can he process on the field, and does he have the clubs in his bag to make that strong arm? There's a difference, I think, within it's similar to pitching. A guy may be able to throw 102 miles per hour, and that's great. But can he locate? does he have the finesse in his arm to throw different types of pitches? And with J.J. McCarthy, like, there's no question for me of, is his arm strong enough to get the ball from point A to point B? It's stronger than most of the guys that all the guys on this current roster. And I mean, Kirk really had some zip to it, and Sam Darnold could hum it in there. But I mean, the separator often is both, again, the processing speed on the field to make decisions in 2.5 seconds while pass rushers are running at you. Like, at that point, it's less about arm strength than it is about just overall decision making on the fly. And then it's less about, like, how hard can you throw it at the combine, 61 miles per hour, but can you get the ball up and over? It's like professional golfers. Like, if all you had to do was hit the ball straight down the fairway and not have to curve the ball around trees when you're in the rough, or find different ways to get the ball underneath and around certain objects and land it on certain places in the green with certain spin, like that's what separates the best golfers from the average ones. And that's, I mean, with J.J. McCarthy, like, that's the aspect that he's even admitted is that's where the development lies. It's like, does he have the touch to get it up and over on a pass that needs to be dropped in a bucket? And that's like, some of that can be taught, some of that's innate. And that's really like where my eyes are going to be throughout training camp into the season. It's less about, like, does this guy have zip on passes? I have absolutely no questions in that regard. Let's see. Next question. Purple Nurple. Keep hearing about Dallas Turner being used differently, maybe more off the ball at linebacker. Can you expand on that? What types of formations? Picturing a 4-3 style front with Pace, Cashman, and Turner. That's kind of a tough. It's really tough until you see it. I mean, could you play like a 4-2-5 in some capacity where you have the off-ball guys being, a Dallas Turner and a Blake Cashman, and then you got, you're a nickel and you can stop the run. Like, there's a lot of different probably ways they could go about making that work. But Dallas Turner has the ball skills and the ability to think quickly to play off the ball. So I expect to see it more. Definitely. And then, like, to the question of what does that look like in terms of formations, I mean, who knows? Maybe it is more base scenarios on early downs where you have 3 linebackers on the field. Maybe it's only 2 linebackers on the field, traditionally off the ball, and you're playing with more safeties. Like, there's a lot of different ways to go about it. Couple more questions. Someone asked, let's see here. I thought this was a good one. Objectively, what's a fair and reasonable expectation fans should have for the Vikings record for the upcoming season? I mean, for me, it's like around 10 wins, and then you see where the chips fall there. That feels, I mean, the Vegas over-under is 8.5. That feels a little low to me. Like, anything around 10 and you're competing in the playoffs is pretty good. But I will say, at some point, I mean, if you get through 4 seasons with this regime and you haven't won a playoff game for as great as a lot of it's been, and as far as the culture has been adapted, like, that's just going to become a very difficult situation. So at some point, like, for me, it almost feels like the objective has to be to win a playoff game in year 4. That might be saying a lot, but we shall see. It just doesn't feel like that is in a league that is as cutthroat as this one. And then, Case, very sad Vikings is the Twitter handle, which we got to change that. One shot to make the 53. Zamiah Vaughn, like, would be one at cornerback. I'm not sure if I'd even expect it at this point. And then, like, a crazy one would be like Chaz Chambliss at edge rusher, or Austin Keys at off-ball linebacker, or Elijah Williams on the defensive line. Like, those would be names, but I'm not seeing anything or hearing anything like absolutely nuts out of left field at this point. So we'll see kind of as things progress. That'll do it for episode 91 of the Alec Lewis Show. If you had a question that I did not get to, please toss it in the comments, throw it to me on social media, and hopefully can flesh it out a little bit more for you guys. In the meantime, please check out the stories at The Athletic. please go take a look at First Resource Bank. Go stop into a branch, sign up for an account. It's easy. It's no questions asked. Talk some Vikings with them as well. We'll be back later in the week with another show. But until then, have a great week, and we will talk to you guys very, very soon.